#1 Marmaduke fan, and I don't really have a thesis for one, just a general question that I'm thinking about. And that is, what constitutes bad art, and what should you call it? Do you call it bad art? Do you call it outsider art? Self-taught art? Some of these are art museum titles that they use for folk art, things that come outside of the academy context. I've always kind of liked the terms childlike art or self-taught art because those are a little bit more neutral. I mean, bad art is inherently insulting. And I'm thinking about Erica Henderson and some really, some artists at SJW Marvel who I think lack a certain professionalism that you kind of need to have in order to be serious about making comic books and selling comic books to an audience. But I see a distinction between a lazy artist and a unschooled or bad artist, where you can actually enjoy the work of a child. I'm going to use the terms I like to use: childlike artist, self-trained. Let's say self-trained. You can sincerely like the work of a self-trained artist and enjoy it and laugh at it and find it to be amazing and almost indescribably wonderful. But a lazy artist, a lazy artist is different because you look at them and you're seeing unfulfilled potential. And I need help finding a term, because I need a term for liking something ironically, but actually being sincere in liking it. I feel like this is almost like what My Little Pony was about. Like, at first people were liking it ironically and sharing memes, and then a lot of the guys who were liking it ironically actually just started liking it. The problem is that's a contradiction in terms. So I don't know what to do to describe something where I am liking something ironically in that I'm kind of laughing while I look at it, but I'm not. The spirit of the laughter isn't to say, "Hey, you suck, Kappa activity books, gingerbread house, jumbo coloring activity book." I sincerely am amazed by how fascinating these drawings are, and it's almost educational. It's so fun. I'd want to recreate that in a funny book. I'd want people to laugh as much reading one of my books as they would laugh reading the gingerbread house jumbo coloring and activity book. So this is yet another example of me finding something in a bargain bin, like, Goodwill for 50 cents. And we're in this age of kind of pseudo-ironic adult coloring books for $40. Good grief. If you want to color, go get a 50-cent kids coloring books, and you're going to find some gems. For one thing, a lot of these are really cheaply produced, and they might just match together a lot of clip art studio kind of resources. So you'll see a variety of styles. And when they do have original drawing, it's usually done really quickly and really crudely. And the easy response is just to laugh and kind of make fun of the artist and say, tee hee hee, you draw like a 6-year-old. But I think there's something I find within these drawings that is very human and very childlike. A child can make a fun, goofy drawing, and they recognize it as a goofy drawing, and they laugh at it. And if you laugh with them, they don't take that as an insult where you're mocking their drawing abilities. The spirit of the drawing is kind of quick and simple and kind of silly, and that's a difficult quality to recreate. This is completely foreign to the context of superhero comics, where there is sort of a semi-serious tone, good and evil, life and death. But as Marvel's kind of expanding attempting to expand its membership, and as it's embracing more of an indie vibe, this is raising a lot of questions for me in terms of what is style, what is the style of a good superhero book. And when you think about it, there have been cartoonists at Marvel who, have kind of been there to do sort of Mad Libs, Mad Magazine, humor at the expense of Marvel's major characters. It used to be a feature of a lot of their books. Dang it. The artist name is escaping me. I've got one of the Marvel comics featuring their cartoonists that I'll look at sometime. But there can be a place for this sort of fun, goofy drawing at Marvel. But I think part of the problem with the Squirrel Girl run is, it's billed as if this is the greatest thing to ever grace comics, and it's billed as something you should give your kids to deprogram them from patriarchy. And Erica Henderson, I don't think Erica Henderson is drawing in kind of a naive and childlike way. I think her way of drawing people is ugly and is informed by a laziness, which can be seen comparing her issue 1 art with her most recent art. Yet, I think there could be a place for a fun, silly book where characters make goofy faces and stuff. But you have to commit to the bit. It has to be for kids or for people who enjoy childlike wonder and childlike humor. You don't like just sink into fart jokes and expect to be taken seriously. But you can have this sort of sincere sense of humor. That's it. Sincerity is the key. If you're drawing ugly because you think that drawing pretty girls is problematic, you're going to arbitrarily draw everyone to be ugly or to look like a gender non-conforming whatever, right? And every girl's got a short boy's haircut or a mental illness haircut, and every boy's a fet, and there's no variety and there's no life in your drawing. You know, if there was just more empathy for people of the opposite political persuasion, you could be a left-winger and have that philosophy and that perspective and make really fun, goofy stories. You know, it'd be hilarious for a Squirrel Girl to have like some conservative dude on the team, and they give each other a lot of flack, but they love each other and they look out for each other. You know, the feeling of empathy and humanness, I think, is really important for separating. Look at that. Look at, it's now kind of like dawning on me what this Santa Claus is. I made a Santa cookie, and it's clearly like this big, loose, just dopey shape with a Santa Claus beard on it that was drawn in like a minute, and he's making this like, whoa, face. That's great. I love this. The other thing is one of my art teachers would use crayon coloring as a way of kind of forcing art students to build their character, because it requires a lot of patience, and crayons are a crummy drawing material. And a lot of these children's books, because they're so cheaply and quickly produced, offer a lot of room for imaginative additions. And, you know, sometimes people will do the thing like they'll draw a whole line of dead bodies, right? And then let's put on a puppet show, you know. So when there's blank white space, there's room for you to express, gosh, I am so disgusting. You can see the shiny wet on my hand from where I'm still sniffling from my cold. This is the most disgusting channel on earth. Well, I have to rethink my life. Good grief. Anyway, yeah, as if I haven't convinced you I'm weird already. Anyway, that tangent. Okay, but yeah, so when you have blank white space, you have imaginative potential to add to that and to transform the drawing into something else. And there's something inherently off, or there's something inherently wacky or funky about these kinds of drawings that make them ripe for reinterpretation or reimagination. Oh, I love this one. Dressed for winter, da 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 da, da 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 da. Da 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 da. So I am going to be in a Mr. Maker compilation video someday. You're all going to look back and say, yep, we knew he was a serial killer. The clues were all there. But my point is that, you know, like a creepy cartoon duck with a Santa hat and soulless black eyes dressed for winter, right? Make that a bad guy in one of your comic stories. And yeah, it'd be goofy, but it'd be inherently creepy because there are actually real things in the world like this, these creepy, weird kids coloring books. And you're not just like Five Nights at Freddy's. The original idea of Five Nights at Freddy's is brilliant, which is one of the reasons why I think it succeeded. And then he's made game after game after game after game. It's become this goofy phenomenon, and now it's cool to hate Five Nights at Freddy's. So maybe it only works if you went to Chuck E. Cheese as a kid, like I did. But, you know, I went to Chuck E. Cheese. I was kind of creeped out by those animatronics even as a kid. And so then when I see, you know, like all the famous Let's Players playing it, there's this deep grip in your gut that something is off, that something is wrong, that these things are coming after you, that they can hurt you. And then game after game after game, then it gets beaten into the ground. But the idea of taking something, it's not enough just to take something innocent and make it creepy and cover it in blood to have a good ghost story or a good horror story. It has to be something that actually gets at you, who you were as a little kid and what you were scared of as a little kid. And sometimes little kids can be scared by goofy things. You know, they're scared that monsters are under the bed, and they're not scared of breaking their neck by jumping off something. But and when you're an adult and then you have adult fears and adult problems, it can be hard to remember those childhood experiences, which is why I like journaling and trying to record what I remember about my childhood while I still can. So I guess the point here is finding inspiration. You can find inspiration in these little 25-cent books that will come out in unusual ways. So maybe you're going to make the next creepy horror game that's going to fascinate all the 10-year-olds, and you too can have a hated franchise where there's blowback for how weird and creepy your fan base is. But but you'll also make bank. So win-win, right? And here's an example of maybe like a more professional style where I'm guessing they pulled from a big collection of clip art studio or whatever. I love putting a happy star on the tree. Gosh. Man, I'm going to convince everyone on the internet that I'm insane at this rate. But okay, I'm serious here. I'm not doing a bit. This can help your artistic practice because you're looking at styles. You're thinking about what's bad art, what's goofy art, and you're thinking how to recreate those qualities when you need to, right? So maybe you have a comic that's of a generally serious tone, but what if there's like a break into insanity, or you look inside the internal mind of a character, or maybe you are drawing like a story for little kids with little kids in mind, and you want it to be people to laugh and to laugh out loud while reading a book, and you don't have the benefit of actors to characterize it, so you're just trying to use drawing. Zach once said in one video as a throwaway line that he didn't like humor in comics because it's hard to recreate the timing that comedy requires in a written and drawn format. But what I think he's missing is, this is harder for realistic superhero styles, but drawing can be inherently funny. We draw goofy pictures when we're little kids, and we laugh at these, and we share them with our friends, and they're hilarious. This is so awesome. I think I've mixed up the eggs, and like Santa with this Wario nose and this ratty hair and this kind of simply sweet little dragon with sort of Sonic the Hedgehog eyes poking out. How would you come up with that? If I asked you, draw me a funny picture, would this occur to you? This occurred to whoever put together the gingerbread house coloring and activities book. Oh gosh, that's creeping me out too. Santa Puppy is here with treats. I didn't even notice this one before. What is he doing? He's like scratching his belly and showing his boxers. What is this? Rings around the eyes are always. New VeggieTales. They did a redesign of VeggieTales, and they put like what's it called? The color around the eye. Iris, I forget the term, but it's really hard to pull off and not make the character look creepy. But then Erica Henderson will just have a tiny little black dot, and all her characters look crazed. A little black dot is meant to imply your pupils contract in tense situations. So a character with little black dots is always going to look manic. So you make it a little bit bigger. So even though it's surrounded by white, they look a little bit more normal because it's not like a pinprick. Santa's laughter is contagious. Ho, ho, ho. Yes, it is. And then here's another. So these are like those 1950s public domain postcards that you probably have seen memes of, right? You've probably seen things like this 1,000 times, and they clearly just plopped it down here. And when you flip through this, you're getting reminded of a variety of ways of drawing something. Jolly old Saint Nick. Thick marker, single outline, very consistent width, but there's a slightly thinner width right there. I guess, I doubt that they drew two lines and then used a fill bucket. I bet they're using a thicker marker for the outline, and then a thinner marker as a second pass for some of the details, and then a thin pen for the wrinkles and the mouth. And it's so wonky, but if this was South Park and he was saying like some potty mouth stuff, this you could imagine a cartoon like that. I don't know, because I don't like just taking something childish and throwing something obscene or gross on top of it, and ta-da, you have humor. I think humor requires a little bit more context than that. I think I've seen a few South Park episodes because I've just become so fascinated in what it's come to represent politically, where it's kind of capturing the spirit of our times politically. And I'm almost kind of ashamed to admit that, because South Park was like sort of the dirty thing of my childhood that you were supposed to stay away from, and I feel sick watching some of it. But at the same time, I also feel like this is it is a creative product from very inventive minds, but that they use their inventive minds for kind of like destroying innocence, destroying, you know, what's innocent and sweet about life, and then making kind of a caustic, hard-hitting satire of it. So I think that South Park, some of the episodes I've seen, at least, I've seen like the first 2 or 3 seasons, they tend to be funny when you describe them to a friend. They're more funny describing what the heck they are than they act, and I actually don't laugh watching them that much. Like I said, I'm honestly interested in South Park as a cultural phenomenon and kind of how it's affected American politics. So I'm just kind of like sitting there going, oh man, that's gross, while I watch it, feeling a little skeeved out. But then I'll think about the idea of it, like Muhammad in a bear suit. That's such a high concept. Like, who thinks of that? You have to have mega cojones to even for the idea to even occur to you, and then to implement it. I like this kind of slightly creepy yet still sincerely smiling Santa Claus, and these sort of almond-eyed little kids, because it's a completely different style than everything else before. And it's clearly, this is why you should, professional comic books shouldn't switch the styles all of a sudden, is people can notice. You know, we know when something looks different than everything that came before it. Here he is again, guys, sneaking down, up to no good. Down he goes. Oh man, this kid's book is, it's driving me nuts. Look at him. What? So many letters to read. I'm not doing a bit. Oh man, that took me by surprise. Okay, if you wanted to draw something to make me laugh, how would you go about doing it? What are the objective qualities that make this funny? Laughter is so subjective, but what objectively about your art could you do to add humor to it? I think the body language is helping add to this humor, because he's leaning back. It's like he's reacting to something, yet there's nothing here. And then he's still got that same sort of simpy, weirdo smile from the previous ones. And, you know, even just the caption and how innocent the caption is adds to the humor, because it's so descriptive. So many letters to read. Well, yes. What are those letters? Your imagination is kicking in, and your imagination is imagining possibilities for what this is. Like, what came before this? What came after this? Is this sort of like a grimdark edgelord fantasy where he's got, like, you know, a ransom note in the back? Or is this something kind of innocent and sweet? Because sometimes kids will draw something really weird and creepy too when they tell you a story, because they have a concept of evil. So they'll have their evil bad guy characters do something absolutely atrocious that freaks you out a little bit. But the kids just contextualizing it as bad guys do bad things, good guys fight the bad guys. I don't know. I'm not a child psychologist, so I'm not going to bloviate about the stories that kids tell. But what I'm trying to get at with this book is that there is something within kids' art and kids' stories that I think grown artists and professional artists need to remember and think about, because it can be hard to recapture that. It can be hard to go back. You can never go back and be a little kid again and have all the innocence and the childlike wonder at the first snowfall. But you can at least remember what childhood was like and draw from that experience in your writing and your drawing. Trying to make myself sound vaguely sane as I look through this with you. Okay, here's yet another style of kind of like a big Jim Davis, kind of Garfield-esque, not the eyes, but big, simple strokes, really clear, consistent line work. Delivering packages is my specialty. Who are you? What is this? So weird. Okay, let me get the answers. All right. So I'm serious, guys. If you want to make art, you can even pick these up free, look at them a bit, and then just let them go. Give them away. Let some kid draw on them and use it as for what it was meant to be. But just looking at something like this informs the imagination. You're adding content by reading serious books like Dickens and Jane Austen, by reading lots of comics, by researching and studying as much as you can. You're dumping information into your brain, and then the brain starts cooking with that, so that when you sit down to write a story or draw a comic, your brain is full of not just one type of content, not just superhero comics, not just manga, but every kind of content imaginable to draw from, to pull from, and to make a creation out of. And the habit of collecting cheap books is immensely useful for informing the imagination, even if it's something that's superficially goofy or kind of laughable. This is a good habit for writers and artists to have, I think, because I never would have thought of half the insane borderline serial killer stuff I saw in this gingerbread house coloring book, but that will now remain in my mind and can be used in multiple contexts. This could be drawn from to make kind of a creepy, evil serial killer character. You're the Christmas killer, mwahaha. Or you could use it to more sincerely and more innocently. Like you could tell like sort of a goofy Santa Claus story where he looks goofy in every picture, and now you have a visual reference within your imagination of a goofy Santa Claus. I've forever tormented your imagination with the contents of this book. Mwahaha! Number one Marmaduke fan. My evil plans of infecting the imagination of all the world continue unabated. Catch you later.